All right, good morning, everybody. Welcome to the July 22nd, 2024 El Dorado Irrigation District Board Meeting. May I have roll call, please?
Directors Osborne, Dwyer, Day, and Anzini present. Director Camp absent. General Manager Abercrombie, General Counsel Polson, and Clerk to the Board Sullivan present.
All right, please join me, rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Do I have a motion to adopt the agenda?
I'll move.
I'll second.
And just to clarify, the, what item did we move? No? This is good? Okay. Okay. All right, I have a motion and a second. Is there any public comment on the adoption of today's agenda?
If members of the public would like to address the board on the adoption of today's agenda, please refer to the detailed instructions on page 2. The adoption was moved by Director Anzini and seconded by Director Dwyer. President Day, it does not appear any members of the public are wishing to speak on the adoption of the agenda. I believe we're ready for the vote.
All right, please vote.
Director Osborne? Division 1, 2, 4, and 5, voting aye, motion carries.
All right, thank you. Jim, do we have any employee recognition this morning?
Good morning. Yes, I have one I'd like to share. The district recently received an email from our customer Bob and Marty Tarnutzer from El Dorado Hills expressing appreciations for the assistance provided by Mark Dory and Justin Stockwell in construction maintenance workers and Janelle Tabor, finance assistant. In their email, they mentioned gratitude for the help from Justin and Mark, stating, "My goodness, we could have not asked for anyone more informed, not only professional, but also clear and informative. You're fortunate to have such dedicated individuals working for EID." They also thanked Janelle, who was pleasant voice and calmed their nerves during the phone call. So again, just another example of excellent service. Thank you.
It's always great to hear. Thank you. All right, is there any public comment today on items related to EID, but not on today's agenda? Oh, I saw a troublemaker out there.
Mr. Troublemaker, sir. Paul Van Springs. Good morning, President Day, members of the board, staff, media, and the public. Today, I am announcing my candidacy for the ID Board of Directors, Division 1, the position represented and well-served by George Osborne for almost 23 years. As many of you know, I've been attending board meetings generally silently for over 15 years. Why would I do that? Let's face it, EID board meetings are not a place of high drama and entertainment generally. But why? Because water interests me. Whereas fire is our greatest threat, water is our greatest commodity. Before moving to El Dorado County in 1988, I served as the vice president of the Donner Summit Public Utility District, which was sewer and water, fire and ambulance, and as a Nevada County Planning Commissioner, where it was made clear to me that in the arid West, water determines everything. My career trajectory has encompassed emergency management, environmental management, and health and safety management, generally often with water issues. My volunteer and leadership roles in various local organizations over 35 years have included currently serving on the executive board of the El Dorado County Fire Safe Council and vice chair of the Diamond Springs Fire Safe Council. I served 7 years on the Snowline Hospice Board, including 2 terms as president, and on the recreation side, as a coach and board member of the Buddy Werner Youth Ski League, and as a founder of Hayes, the Hangtown Association of Zymergy enthusiasts. That was a beer club. This does not include several regional and national organizations. I've long thought that the best and most I can contribute to our wonderful community is to sit on the ID Board of Directors to ensure the district fulfills its mission and guiding principles. I've spent my time learning about the district, staying current on the issues, seeking advice from many sources, and I'm now ready to take that leap. My priorities are simple. I will work to ensure that EID's freshwater, wastewater, recycled water, hydropower, and recreational services are, in this order, safe and reliable, affordable and sustainable. I am not running because I'm angry, have an axe to grind, or focused on a single issue. I intend to file my papers with the Elections Department shortly. I have developed a press release with copies for the board and staff and the media. I look forward to serving on this board of directors should my candidacy be successful. Thank you. And your copy.
Thank you, Paul, and we wish you well.
Mr. Day,
Yes.
I first met Paul many years ago. He was the safety officer for the Conservation Corps. We had a fatality in Riverside, and I was assigned to that investigation, and Paul was a safety officer, and we got to know each other for 2 weeks. And we may have had an adult beverage together. I'm not sure, maybe 3. But he's a good guy. Okay?
Thank you. All right, is there any other public comment on anything not on today's agenda?
If members of the public would like to address the board for items not on today's agenda, please refer to page 2. Present day does not appear any members of the public are wishing to speak.
All right, thank you. Go to communications. Jim?
Nothing else to report, thank you.
Okay. Lori?
Yes.
I just wanted to make sure that the board is informed that on August 8th, the Mountain County Water Regional Association is meeting for regional leaders at Too Good Winery, which will be on Main Street on August 8th between 5 to 7. And I will be hosting, and so will Lori Parlin from the El Dorado County Water Board. So those who are interested in attending, the board is welcome to come.
Great, thank you. Pat?
Thank you. Last Thursday, I had the opportunity to tour the upcountry facilities with the El Dorado Water Agency, Rebecca Gao, and 2 of her staff. It was the 3rd and final tour that we've given them of the district. I said, we toured you all from top to bottom, and Rebecca corrected me and said, no, we actually went from bottom to top. It was a really good tour. I think we expressed all of our concerns from the irrigation district about the Alder Creek Dam project, and about made sure that they understood that we did not include the White Rock penstock in our water plan. And that was all a good conversation. At the end, she sent me an email last night or this morning saying how much they enjoyed the tour and thank you, and also recognizing Dan and John and Matt for doing such a great job, and they complimented the district on the quality and depth of staff that we have. So it was, I think, a good thing. Again, building bridges to the water agency is pretty important. And just as a kind of a fun side note, they have a new person, her name is Heidi, that's in the management staff, and it was her 4th day on the job, and she's a bit afraid of heights, and we had her hike across the swinging bridge that's at the Kybers Diversion Dam. She did quite well. End of report.
Good, thank you. And that building bridges is exactly the point. And thank you, Pat, for doing that. And thank you, staff, for doing that. George?
All is well in Cabo San Lucas. Other than I would not recommend going this time of year because the humidity was absolutely atrocious. The temperature was less than here by 10 degrees, but the humidity was 65, 70%. Even the staff was complaining about everything stuck to them, so, and the fishing was moderate. Only caught a few fish, but I didn't go out on a boat because I would say, I asked my daughters who joined us, said, do you really want to be out on a boat in this heat and humidity? And they said, no. So we passed it up. So anyway, I'll go back in October.
Yeah, much better time. Thank you. And I'm just looking forward to this fall and the upcoming acorn reports. So. I'll move on to the consent calendar. And I'm sorry, Jennifer, did you have anything to report?
Nothing today, thank you.
Thank you. We'll move on to the consent calendar. Do I have a motion?
I'd like to ask a question on item 8. For, item 8 is the,
Director Osborne, do you want to move it and then we do for a second? You could ask your
I
question.
can move it and.
Or do you want to pull it?
I just have a question.
Okay, so let's do a first and a second, and then we'll address your question.
Okay, I move it.
You move approval of the consent calendar? I just
No, I
want to make
move it.
sure
Well, I want to move, I have a question on item 8.
But do you want to move the whole consent calendar, or do you want
Well,
to pull?
pull item 8,
All right.
just a simple question.
All right, so the motion is to approve the consent calendar absent item 8. We have a second for that. Is there any public comment on that?
If members of the public would like to address the board on the approval of today's consent calendar, please refer to the detailed instructions on page 2 of today's agenda. President Day, it does not appear that any members of the public are wishing to speak on the approval of today's consent calendar minus item number 8, moved by Director Osborne and seconded by Director Dwyer. I believe we're ready for the vote.
All right, please vote.
Divisions 1, 2, 4, and 5, voting aye, motion carries.
All right, George, item 8.
Just a question for our illustrious finance director. Is this, does this go on the tax rolls when it's sold? If the property is sold, does that come out of the sale or just to refresh my feeble memory?
Yes, so Jamie Bandy, Finance Director. The charges are placed on the tax roll currently as of today. If the property is sold at that time, either the current homeowner, as part of escrow, will pay those. If that doesn't happen, it does stay with the property, and the new homeowners would then be responsible for the charges.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Would you like to,
All right, we have a motion for item 8.
Second.
We have a second. Is there any public comment on item 8? Nobody inside? Do we have anybody online?
if members of the public would like to address the board on consent calendar item number 8, please refer to the instructions on today's agenda. President Verakamp does, sorry, President Day does not appear, he's not even here. I apologize. President Day, it does not appear any members of the public are wishing to speak on consent calendar item number 8, option 1, moved by Director Osborne and seconded by Director Dwyer. I believe we're ready for the vote.
All right, please vote.
Divisions 1, 2, 4, and 5 voting aye, motion carries.
All right, we'll move to item 10. We'll open the public hearing at 9:16 a.m. Mr. Deason.
Good morning. Good morning, members of the board. My name is Brian Deason, Environmental Resources Supervisor for the district, and I am here today to request the board's adoption of a negative declaration for temporary reservoir reoperation water transfer to comply with the California Environmental Quality Act. Next slide, please. Earlier this year, the board approved 2 purchase and sale agreements with Westlands Water District for 2 different water transfers. One was the conserved water transfer, which you recall I was here last month to present. The other is for this reservoir reoperation water transfer. Those agreements were contingent upon compliance with CEQA, which is why I'm here today. Just a roadmap of the presentation. I'm going to just provide an overview of the project, talk about the environmental review process, talk about comments we received on the environmental document, and finally ask the board to adopt the environmental document. So this project involves reservoir reoperation transfer. This is basically where EID makes releases of stored water from its reservoirs to be conveyed to buyers south of the Delta. The sources of water for this transfer are Weber Reservoir, Silver, and Caples Lake. The project does require compliance with CEQA, and staff has prepared an initial study and proposed negative declaration to meet those requirements. Next slide, please. The project objectives. So we're looking to put EID's water to beneficial use. Water transfers are also a great source of non-rate revenue. It's a real benefit to our customers to help offset operational costs. A few disclaimer though, there's a lot of factors that affect our ability to conduct water transfers. We do have to start early before we know exactly what conditions are going to be to ensure that we're in a position to transfer water should conditions allow. It's looking increasingly unlikely this year that we may be able to transfer. However, this is a necessary step to complete the CEQA process to ensure that if conditions change, we would be able to transfer. Next slide, please. So this proposed transfer is similar to past transfers that EID has conducted in 2015, 2018, 2020, and 2022. It would involve the sale of water to either federal or state contractors south of the Delta. And of course, as with all transfers, this water is not needed by EID customers in 2024. Another important element about the water transfer is that we don't do anything out of the ordinary to conduct these. So all the reservoirs and streams involved would be operated within the range of historical operations, and the transfer would be completed in compliance with all the applicable rules, minimum stream flow requirements, water rights, license conditions, et cetera. Next slide, please. So this transfer involves up to 750 acre-feet of water from Weber Reservoir and a combined total of up to 3,550 acre-feet from Caples and Silver Lakes. So a total of up to 4,300 acre-feet. That is an upper limit. It could be less than that. There's a lot of factors that affect how much water we could actually transfer, including hydrology, customer demands, and compliance with all those various requirements. So just to look at the mechanics of the transfer graphically, this graph shows Caples, Silver, and Jenkinson Lake storage. The y-axis on the left is Caples and Silver storage in acre feet. The y-axis on the right is Jenkinson Lake storage. You can see the purple line at the top is Caples storage. The blue line at the bottom is Silver Lake storage. Now, what you might notice about those is with or without the transfer, those lakes' storage is the same. And that's because water that would come from Caples or Silver Lake, without the transfer, EID would move that water over to Jenkinson Lake and use that to meet customer demands this year. Now, with the transfer, we would still redivert the water at the El Dorado Diversion Dam. However, we'd run that through the powerhouse and then deliver that down to Folsom, where it could be conveyed to the Delta and to water contractors. So you see Caples and Silver, no change in reservoir storage with and without the transfer. Where we do see a change is the green line in the middle, which is Jenkinson Lake. So without the transfer is the solid green line. And with the transfer shows the reduction in storage that would occur with the transfer.
And that would be the maximum. It could potentially be less than that or none of that.
Correct. Yeah, so that, the difference between those two lines represents the 3,550 acre feet that would come from Caples and Silver. And the bar graph on the bottom shows a potential release schedule for how we would deliver the water. And that's subject to change as well.
And on that chart, if you look at the right axis, it's up to 30,000 acre feet in storage still in Sly Park. So it meets and exceeds our drought planning guidelines.
Thank you. Next slide, please. This is a similar graphic that shows Weber Reservoir. Acre feet on the y-axis, and a potential delivery schedule there as well. And this would represent up to 750 acre feet of water. Next slide. So moving on to the environmental review process. So prior to approving a project, EID must consider the potential environmental effects. This is in compliance with the California Environmental Quality Act, or CEQA, CEQA guidelines, and EID's own procedures for implementing CEQA. Next slide. The purpose of the CEQA process is to describe and disclose potential environmental impacts associated with an action, help identify ways to lessen potentially significant impacts associated with that action. It also promotes coordination with other public entities and public participation. Next slide, please. EID is the lead agency for this proposed water transfer. Staff has reviewed and evaluated the project in an initial study. We found no potentially significant environmental effects associated with this action. No mitigation measures are necessary. And in that case, a negative declaration is the appropriate environmental document.
Ryan, this just kind of came into my head of, could you, I know you've explained it to us before, touch on the backfill requirement and what's the rationale behind that?
Sure. So, Director Day, I believe you're referring to the refill agreement, which is a necessary agreement that's required by Department of Water Resources, Reclamation, and the district. And what that entails is it helps ensure that downstream water users are not impacted by the transfer the following year when we refill the hole, essentially, that was made in the reservoir from the water that we transferred. So those refill agreements have stipulations that identify when we can fill the reservoir such that it does not affect downstream users. And that's typically during times when there's plenty of water throughout the system. Yes. I'm just going to go back one slide. Just wrong way. Yeah, there we go. So we did release the initial study for public review to all the various venues that we typically do, including posting in all the counties associated with where the water originates and where it could be delivered. Would you like me to?
No. Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Have we received any comments? Because it is a public review. And it's June 7th through July 8th, so.
Yeah, thank you. Nice segue.
Okay, yep.
Yeah, yeah. So we did receive one comment from the California Department of Water Resources. Their comment letter it described that there may not be pumping capacity at their facilities to convey transfer water in 2024. So this water needs to be delivered through the Delta, pumped at either federal or state facilities that then pump that water for delivery to San Luis Reservoir or through the canal system for delivery to the buyer. And effectively, what the issue is there's water quality requirements in the Delta, there's fishery requirements in the Delta. The State Water Project has more water available to them this year than they're able to pump themselves due to those restrictions. So they just don't have any room for transfer water at this time. So, but by us proceeding with this action, this is a factor, one of those factors that EID has control over in order to complete the CEQA process. We would be in a position in case those conditions change. The DWR also just identified some procedural requirements like the need for a refill agreement and requesting that we enter information about our water transfer on their online database. Next slide, please. So our response to comments is provided in the agenda packet. CEQA does not require that we prepare written responses for an initial study negative declaration. However, it's our practice to do so. The comments that we received did not require any revisions to the initial study or negative declaration, didn't identify any potentially significant effects. So we're ready to move forward. Next slide. So I'm here to ask the board to adopt the negative declaration. This would complete the CEQA environmental review. Does not mean that you're committing to go through with the water transfer. It just means that you have considered the negative declaration and the comments received. Next slide. So our transfer period is July through November 30th. So we still have some time where conditions may allow. As I had described, there may not be capacity at the pumping facilities to be able to make it happen this year, but we would be in position in case those conditions change. And that's why we're recommending that the board adopt the CEQA document today. Oh boy. All right, option one. Adopt the proposed negative declaration. Make the following California Environmental Quality Act findings. Based on the whole record, there is no substantial evidence that the project will have a significant effect on the environment. The negative declaration reflects El Dorado Irrigation District's independent judgment and analysis. Specify that documents or other material which constitute the record of proceedings upon which this decision is based shall be in the custody of the clerk to the board at El Dorado Irrigation District headquarters. And we recommend option one.
Move one.
We have a motion and a second. Any board questions or comments? Pat?
Yes, as we've said before, I think this is an important opportunity for the district because it allows us to potentially recoup some of the cost of piping the main ditch and the water that we conserve there. So it does set a precedent for future years, and I think it's very important. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, is there any public comment on this item?
If members of the public would like to address the board on public hearing item number 10, please refer to instructions on today's agenda. President Day, it does not appear any members of the public are wishing to speak on public hearing item number 10, option 1, moved by Director Osborne and seconded by Director Anzini. I believe we're ready for the vote.
All right, please vote.
Divisions 1, 2, 4, and 5, voting aye, motion carries. Will you close the public?
Yeah, and thank you, Brian, and we'll close the public hearing at 9:32 a.m. All right, now we'll move to information item number 11.
Good morning. My name is Kaylee DeLongchamp. I'm here to talk about the Bridlewood Reservoir 4 and Reservoir 7A tanks recoating project. I'm going to give you an update on our design process. So last year in February, the board received an overview regarding the condition of the district storage reservoirs and tanks. And in October, the board adopted the 2024-2028 CIP, which included this project. At that same board meeting, they also awarded a contract to Peterson Brewstad for the design of this project. So staff have identified Bridlewood Reservoir 4 and Reservoir 7A tanks as the next in line for recoating. So this contract with Peterson Brewstad assessed the current condition of these tanks as well as performed an alternatives assessment for different options for these tanks as well. So a little background, the district has 32 welded steel tanks in the systems of drinking water, recycled water, and wastewater. These tanks typically have a life expectancy of 75 to 100 years. Industry standard is to recoat these every 15 years. I should note that this will be the first recoating for each of these tanks that we're discussing today. So here's a overview map of all the storage tanks and reservoirs in the district, and I've circled the ones we're talking about today. So we've got Bridlewood, Reservoir 4, and Reservoir 7A. So Bridlewood is a recycled water tank that was built in 2003 and is 4 million gallons.
I remember when we built that.
Reservoir 4 is a drinking water tank. Reservoir 4 is a drinking water tank that was built in 2000, and it is 500,000 gallons. And Reservoir 7A is a drinking water tank built in 2004, and it is 3.9 million gallons. So the current design contract included a structural assessment, which included a tank float to visually inspect the structural members, and they also performed a review of the as-built drawings to determine if the tanks are in compliance with current codes, which it was looking at snow loading and earthquake loading. They also performed a coating condition assessment, so this included a site visit and a dive to visually inspect the existing coatings of the tanks. So based off the found conditions, an alternatives assessment was performed, and that was summarized in a basis of design report, which is what I'm sort of presenting on today, is where we're currently at. And then, of course, following this, they are going to put together a full bid package, construction drawings, and specifications. So Bridlewood tank, As you can see, it's in really great condition. We have corrosion at the bolted connections. We have corrosion and rust staining and blistering. We also have spot peeling in locations. And on the exterior, we can start to see delamination or peeling of that roof, which is that bottom picture. Next slide. So Reservoir 4, we've got delamination of steel members there in the right upper corner. You can see one of those members. It's one of the rafters. We've also got corrosion and rust staining and blistering, as well as some spot peeling. And again, we've got corrosion at all of the bolted connections. The exterior is in pretty good condition. There is some minor corrosion visible at the exterior roof vent. So you can see that in that bottom picture there. Yeah, so that is the roof vent at the, yeah. So at Reservoir 7A, we've got significant corrosion or rust staining, significant spot peeling, blistering, delamination of the steel members, corrosion at all of the bolted connections. It's in pretty bad shape. And then additionally, there at the center vent, which is that bottom picture, the corrosion has gotten so bad that it's actually penetrated the steel and has caused leaks. So you can see we've performed some repairs of leaks right there due to the corrosion that is present in that tank. So all in all, the structural assessment of these tanks pretty much recommended that we would need to do partial or full replacement of the rafters, girders, braces, roof plate, center support, and all of the bolted connections were recommended to be replaced. They also performed the coating condition assessment. So the coating inspection evaluated the existing coatings based off several criteria, including rust effects, spot peeling, the stage of corrosion, level of delamination, how much delamination was present, coating or the chalking of the coating and the degree of that. Just looked at all of that and came up with a rating for the interior and the exterior. So the rating was either excellent, good, fair, or poor. As you can see, we did great. We got poor on the majority and fair on the exterior of reservoir number 4. So a poor condition rating means that there are wholesale coating defects or corrosion concerns that typically require significant removal and replacement of the coating in the area. Typically, these services have more coating defects and or corrosion than is expected for the age of the system. It was also recommended in the report that the interior coatings of all the tanks be removed and replaced as soon as possible. So following looking at the overall condition of these tanks, they looked at several alternatives and analyzed these. So they looked at a partial rehabilitation of the roof, which is replacement of just parts of the roof, so maybe the rafters, maybe not all the rafters, some of the girders or part of the girders. And this is similar to what we just did at the Bass Lake tank number 2, where we replaced the rafters and some of the roof plate, but we didn't replace the girders, and we rehabilitated the majority of the roof plate. They also looked at installing a new aluminum dome, which is similar to what we did at Reservoir 3. We installed an aluminum dome. They also looked at doing a whole new steel roof, which is what was done at Reservoir 2 most recently. And then they also looked at what would it cost to just tear down the tank and put in a new concrete tank. So this analysis looked at several things. Of course, one of them was cost. We looked at both the initial cost as well as the life cycle cost. We looked at the schedule, how long it would take to perform this repair or replacement. And we also looked at future maintenance. What would it look like to have this in our system for the rest of the life of that tank? So for a steel roof, either rehabilitating it or new roof, it does have a lower initial cost. However, it is susceptible to corrosion, and it must be recoated every 15 years. And so with that, it has a higher lifetime cost. With an aluminum dome, it does have the lowest lifetime cost, and this is because domes do not need to be recoated. However, we did look at some additional benefits of either to try and be consistent with the character of the existing tanks. So we looked at either a matte finish or an exterior coated. So you can see that picture on the bottom is an example of an exterior coated aluminum dome, which would have to be recoated, but on a less stringent basis of a steel roof. So the con is it does have a slightly higher initial cost than compared to a steel roof rehabilitation or replacement. And then, if you want to go to the next slide. We also looked at a lower rise aluminum dome, so we have an example of that. And we also looked at a matte finish versus a standard finish as well. So we looked at several options within this option.
I think that's important because of the aesthetic issues of the Jiffy Pop dome.
You said it, I didn't.
So yes, it's good that we're being considerate of our neighbors and the impact on the visual things.
So the final option that we looked at was, of course, replacing with a concrete tank. The pros of this would be, of course, that it's a 100-year useful life with minimal maintenance costs. However, this has the highest initial and lifetime costs. This is due to the fact that although the roofs of these existing tanks are in very bad condition, the actual structural components of the walls and the floor are in good condition. So once we replace the coating on the walls and floor, those are going to be having a lot of lifetime left in them. So this is a couple tables to help understand sort of that cost comparison and analysis. The important thing to look at here is the cost comparison of an aluminum dome versus the welded steel roof, either new or rehabilitated. Overall, they're not that far in difference, and again, this is at a 30% cost estimate. But then if you go look at that life cycle cost, it has a lower life cycle cost, which means overall, better bang for our buck. So based off of all this analysis, we recommend replacing the steel roofs with aluminum domes at each of the sites. So here are the anticipated construction costs. So you may notice that these don't quite match the other ones. So this cost includes an estimated inspection cost as well as has a 30% contingency, which is consistent with the preliminary cost estimate. So this is the most likely construction cost at this point that we believe. And you can see we did include money within the 2024 and 2028 CIP for this project. So anticipated project schedule, we're planning to have design complete in October of this year and plan to come back to the board in November to award a construction contract for Reservoir 4 and Reservoir 7A. Bridlewood would be performed after that, so we need to get a potable water connection constructed first so that we can keep the recycled water system online during the construction. So Bridlewood wouldn't occur until November of 2025 and November of 2026 in 2 phases. Any questions?
Any board questions?
Oh, just a comment.
Yeah.
If we're going to do those domes, we could do them like the Las Vegas dome and light up the world. It might be a little bit more expensive, but we're going to get a sponsorship.
Sell
You know,
advertising.
Pepsi or.
Right.
Yeah.
I like that idea. I get to get advertising on it. George?
The Bridlewood tank is an integral part of the system. Is that going to be done, anticipated to be done in the middle of winter?
Yeah, so if you looked at the construction scheduling, we've got it in November to March, so that winter period, and we're going to be, of course, closely monitoring that. That is why it's going to be performed in 2 phases. We'll do the structural, and then we'll come back and finish the coating.
Estimated, 90 days to complete the project or something like that?
So we have about 3 months with each phase, so.
Okay, thank you.
All right, do I have a motion?
There's
The
no motion.
information.
Oh, sorry, information item, you're right.
You get to hear it again.
I know. All right, thank you very much. Is there any public comment on information item number 11?
If members of the public would like to address the board on information item number 11, please refer to the instructions in today's agenda. President Day, it does not appear any members of the public are wishing to speak on information item number 11.
All right, thank you. Thank you.
President Day?
Yes.
The reason it's an information item, I believe the board gave us direction to bring it, these type of items as information items first. If these are relatively routine reconstruction jobs that we have to do, we can certainly skip the information item and go directly to
No,
bid. It's up to you.
Yeah, no, I was actually thinking, I just forgot what I had thought before, but I was thinking in the middle of it, I'm glad we're reviewing this ahead of time. I think it's good. All right, Mr. Money.
All right, good morning, members of the board. John Money, Engineering Manager for the district, and here this morning to provide an update for the district alternative energy facilities as an information item. So again, this is our second time reporting back to the board now that our newer solar and battery facilities are are getting up to speed. We're again a little late in providing this, and that's driven. We're still having a heck of a time coordinating some of that information with PG&E and making our meter reads consistent so that we can feed into this analysis. So that also included a couple last-minute updates. But next slide, please. So again, the reason we're here today is Board Policy 8020 states that the district shall seek to augment its electric energy and capacity revenue stream and/or reduce its operational energy expenses by new generation facilities whenever they're economically viable. And the reason that policy is being driven is, again, PG&E expenses continue to be one of the larger expenses that the district incurs, trending up to almost $7 million last year. Reporting back on our first facility, Reservoir 7. So this is a in-conduit hydro facility. It operates under an RESBCT tariff, which allows power to be generated at one facility and then credited back to another facility. So the energy that's actually generated here offsets the electricity used at our Folsom Lake Intake facility. So this project, again, it has two inline Cornell turbines. Total capacity of that site is just under 0.5 megawatt. This project has incurred a couple difficulties as we've brought it online. So the estimated costs originally were just under $3 million, and the estimated annual savings were estimated at about $215,000 at the time the project was conceived or went to construction. That resulted in using about a 17-year payback with an estimated, again, the useful life somewhere between 30 and 50 years for this facility. Unfortunately, the total project cost as the project went through construction ended up being slightly elevated. I think we added about another $400,000 onto that total project cost. And at the same time, annual savings have been quite a bit less, trending just over 50% of what was originally estimated. So somewhere between 110 and 120,000 under our current operation strategy. So using that same model.
Because of the system being offline?
No, there's a lot of reasons. I think, again, when the initial consultant went through the facility, I think they assumed some optimal operating conditions. So if you look at this figure on the right-hand side of the screen, there is a lot going on at that facility. So water comes down the hill under high pressure from the Pleasant Oak main, and it's split between a pressure-reducing station and this generation facility, and then proceeds on to tank 7A. So under ideal conditions, we would be able to accommodate, almost all that flow through the turbines. However, that's not. We have to operate our system with a lot of safety factors. We don't want to blow up pipes. We don't want to. We've got to switch flow throughout the day as system demands fluctuate. And so that makes it very difficult to make those automated changes basically through those Cornell turbines and through the facility. At the same time, its partner there, the PRS-5, has not been a fully automated facility. Typically, we would have mag meters so that we can really dial in the flow. Many of our facilities still operate on floats and more of hydraulic-driven triggers. So there's opportunities to improve the hydraulics, and staff is pursuing some of those. But to date, the system just has not been able to be optimized. Again, getting back to that, so that's basically drug the payback period close to the useful life of the facility. So really, it's about a break-even investment at this point. However, again, we will be pursuing additional improvements to potentially optimize that and better improve that's going to be an offshoot of actually some improvements we have to make at that PRS-5.
Yeah, I appreciate the getting this information and the feedback and report on this. And it is what it is. We can't go back and change anything, but I think we can use this as a cautionary tale of there was a lot of questions and objections back when we got into this, questioning even the 17-year, which was in the super optimistic. That's not 17-year payback is not good. It's not a good investment. Most business people wouldn't touch that. And so I think we need to be careful with new tech or we get enthusiastic with a vendor that's selling us on something. Just going in the future, let's be a little more cautious with how we spend the money and invest it. And we realistically, one thing breaks down or one repair happens and suddenly now it's 40 years or 45 years or, so I don't think we'll ever catch up. So, I just think, again, use this as a cautionary tale going forward of being a little more cautious and careful on our investments.
Absolutely. And again, it's a good lesson learned on how, we should not be driving these based on modifying our practices. If we select technology that's significantly impacting on how we operate our facilities, again, that's a whole nother level of complexity that we really have to be aware of up front as we roll these out.
Yes, thanks. The question is, and this has been a topic we've discussed before about does it pay off or whatever. As a personal person, I have solar on my roof, and I know I'm feeding, into the economy, and I have less power outages right now. However, as an entity, a public entity, is the best use of what we can do to keep our technology good, clean, and a buyback. There are grants available. I sound like a broken pipe, whatever you want to call it. It has to do with grants that are available to improve our energy, and it's out there. And I'm going to ask later on to put this on an agenda item somewhere, what we're doing regarding grants. But I think it's really beneficial if we pay attention to the grants that are available. And I've been actually reached out to by people, my constituents, saying, what are we doing about X, Y, and Z grants and why they're available? So I'd like to get some feedback on that. And if there's grants that are available to help us move into a more beneficial to our district and beneficial to our ratepayers.
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, I was just discussing again with Ms. Bandy. So we do have a grants analyst that is supposed to be coming on board. I believe they were supposed to be here today, but I think he's pushed off for 2 weeks for moving reasons. But that's again, we are actively pursuing that. That'll give us a little bit more bandwidth to do that. In addition to that, we meet with PG&E consistently throughout the year, and they have several programs as well that we kind of ferret out through the process. One of their larger ones requires us to hire their consultants, which gets a little bit less, again, so we've got to be cognizant of how it is operate or affecting our operations at the same time. But we are, again, consistently looking at opportunities.
So 50 years from now, will we be still dealing with wooden flumes versus will we be dealing with flaps on the water canals that create a power source for us, which I know is coming down because Tuolumne Irrigation District is doing really good job. But it may not be beneficial for our gravity-fed system rather than something's in the valley.
Yeah, again, again, we've got to be cognizant of how that affects our operations. So the concerns there would be is how do we get those installed and get them pulled out as we're doing maintenance, as
Right.
there's freezing conditions.
Sure.
We get the frazzle ice and other difficulties that we deal with in, again, a very remote, sometimes inaccessible location. So again, we definitely are open to new options as they come out, but we'll have to evaluate as they come
Yeah, and I'm going to correct myself. It's not Tuolumne, it's Turlock Irrigation District.
Yeah,
so,
which would be maybe a little farther down the hill.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
Next, please. So moving on to, again, a little bit more positive and less impactful for operations, our solar facilities. So we do have 2 solar facilities, or kind of grouped together, one at our El Dorado Hills wastewater treatment plant and one at our Deer Creek. Our El Dorado Hills consist of a 1 megawatt. You can see there it's kind of the lighter fields in the middle. Those were the original fields that the district owns outright, surrounded by some additional power purchase agreements facilities that we entered into in 2019, I believe. Go next slide. So again, that original 1 megawatt facility was a partnership with the district and I believe PG&E at the time that was half paid for by matching funds under a grant type program. That facility has continued to produce. We did have to replace the inverters on that. Again, it's a first generation technology, so rather than having string inverters, which the other fields have, these had centralized inverters. So again, it's a much more costly kind of antiquated facility, but again, the district owns it outright at this point, and it continues to generate money. We continue to put the estimated useful life out at about 10 years. Again, because our facility, the panels continue to generate at a very an elevated rate. So right now they've degraded about 14%, which is still pretty acceptable.
That's
for their
actually
age.
pretty good, I mean, for 18 years old.
They are, yeah, and we've had our consultants, as they've looked at these panels, have been a little amazed. So we, again, it kind of lucked out when this facility went in. So again, for that, because we own that facility outright in 2023, we're estimating just under $400,000 in cost savings, with offsets to the headworks and blower electrical bills at the facility. Again, we also completed the power purchase agreement at El Dorado Hills, and that array is used to offset our UV disinfection. That one's tiered a little bit differently, so we still pay for power produced for that, any power generated by those panels. However, it's at a much, much lower rate. So I think we're paying about 8 cents a kilowatt, whereas PG&E fluctuates, up to 60 cents a kilowatt hour at peak periods.
I'm sorry, will the NEM 1, because like NEM 2 is going to sunset in 20 years.
NEM 1 is will also sunset. So
Okay.
eventually, and these are in the cost projections when we originally did it, or did the analysis. And that's also why we pulled the trigger on doing the PPAs, is because at that point, NEM 2 was projected to sunset. They were working out and negotiating what that sunsetting period was. So I believe we get I think it's 15 years and I forget what the magic date is, but 15 years after that, we are billed under the NEM 2, and then everything goes to whatever the current PG&E rates are. So again, combining those two numbers, we ended up with a total cost savings of $744,000. That is, by the way, a slightly different number than what was reported in the board package. So just I'll clarify that. We're kind of last minute updating some of these costs again as they came in from our consultants. So next slide, please. So again, our Deer Creek is our other facility. These are both power purchase agreements for the two sites. So really, it was one field that when it went in, but the way it's segregated by its meters, it's treated as two sites. And again, similar, one side is used to offset our UV at the facility, and the other is used to offset our headworks and blower building. Total cost savings for that comes out just short of $600,000. Together, kind of was trying to cut down the slides. Together, actually one other benefit is we also sell all of our green credits from that, or our rec credits. And that also came in at about $95,000 in revenue this year. So combined, total solar benefit to the district is just about 1.4 million. So again, that's kind of our largest bang for the buck. The other thing about solar is it doesn't impact our facilities unless we had to for some reason, remove those because of some major plant expansion or some other non-anticipated impact. You know, they just sit up there and take up the kind of the buffer land around our plants. Moving on to our next energy savings line. Again, the district has kind of inherited 8 battery energy storage facilities, or basically the Tesla Megapack or Power Pack facilities. These were provided under a PUC grant administered by PG&E, which basically provided these batteries at no cost to the district. And that's no cost for the batteries themselves on a standard installation. There were additional costs for bringing up access at the sites, or the case of the headquarters building, we incorporated our generator facility on that. So there were some additional costs. But generally, those costs were also offset planned district projects like bringing a new main disconnect in at Deer Creek. So a lot of those costs were almost basically a wash at the end of the project. The packs also do provide some limited backup for the sites. So in brief power outages, it'll roll over into battery instead of having our generators having to use diesel. But again, the big savings there for the district is they charge during off hours and power our facilities during peak hours. So we realized that delta for our cost savings at each of those sites. Again, we're kind of, these sites rolled in basically over about 2.5 years as PG&E was approving them. The last site, which is not included in this analysis, is at Deer Creek. And that was just approved in August of last year. So that's why it's still a little bit delayed. Projected 1 year cost savings initially was about $170,000. The 7 sites alone provided $260,000 cost savings last year. So again, significantly overperforming what we had originally anticipated. This year, as that Deer Creek is fully realized, we're anticipating about another $100,000 in savings. So again, that's $750,000 for off of a grant project that we pursued. Again, we do continue to look at additional options or additional opportunities for offsets. One of those was in the final days of the battery installations. The Congress did pass the IRA of 2020. And that allows for any of your installation costs to be offset by 30% as a tax credit. Historically, that had been available for anybody who files a tax return, but the district doesn't file a tax return. So that was the change under the IRA, is it allowed for nonprofits and government agencies to claim those credits. So we did have 3 facilities that came online after that was passed, and so we are pursuing some additional rebates on our Deer Creek wastewater treatment plant, El Dorado lift station, and the installation here at headquarters. So we're tracking that. Again, getting into the NEM 1, NEM 2, and I'm forgetting the new acronym that we've switched to. NEM 2 is no longer available by PG&E. However, they've extended another grandfathering period where they give you a look back where you could apply for basically full net metering payback to any facility. So we've again kind of scrubbed what's available as far as footprint and location and facility, and really the headquarters facility is kind of our last look. So we did have a consultant reevaluate this facility. That would include a 0.37 megawatt, basically solar canopies like you'd see at the high schools or Walmart locally. Total project cost is about $2.26 million. We looked at 2 options, either doing a cash outlay and purchasing that outright, or again, doing a power purchase agreement. Both of those had pretty significantly or pretty delayed payback periods. And at this point, the district's not, or staff is not recommending that we pursue them. Again, we're getting into that 13 to 17, not quite 17 year of the Res 7. So, and just as a point of reference, the net payback over those 25 years under a cash purchase price is, $840,000. We're seeing that in 1 year from either of our wastewater treatment plants, so or approximately. So it's just a little bit risky considering we could hit hard rock or have any other change orders during construction. We also looked at RESBCT, or Renewable Energy Self-Generation Bill Credit Transfer. It's a lot easier to sing it. So again, under this program, you can build up to a 5 megawatt facility. We looked at kind of some of the larger district properties that were available, Texas Hill or the former Bray site. We selected Bray because that's, again, kind of in the Walmart area where there's more infrastructure there and more likely to be a PG&E project if we move forward with it. Total project cost for that 5 megawatt facility, just for the facility itself, was a little over $13 million. It has some really positive payback aspects. So if we did a PPA, it's an $11 million net present value to the district, or a cash purchase up to $20 million. However, again, there's significant risk with this. And the biggest of that is that PG&E's fixed as far as how many megawatts they can receive under this program. So they've already approved, which means that they've built and accepted 82 megawatts, and then they've authorized, so that somebody has gone through with their application for another 27. So the program as of March was already oversubscribed by 4 megawatts. So go ahead, next slide. So it's a first come, first served process. So basically, the district went through with this, we would be completely at risk until we got our final building permit. So all PG&E permitting cost, all environmental review cost, design consultant cost, and then construction cost would all be on the district until we actually cross that goal. And again, staff is feels that that's just an unacceptable risk for the district.
Yeah, I mean, they're already oversubscribed, and unless they opened it up to more, which doesn't sound like they have the capacity to do that.
Well, again, it's a first come, first serve. So they would, if we pursue this, they would engage with us, and we could get on the list. And then instead of being oversubscribed by 4 megawatts, they'd be oversubscribed by 9. And we'd again have to run the whole gambit and get final acceptance before anybody else who's completing with those credits. And there's just no certainty in that whole process. And then you have a 5 megawatt facility for 13 million that we may or may not be able to operate.
Right.
So again, in conclusion, electricity has been and will continue to be one of the largest expenses for the district. So staff is continuing to look for ways that we can minimize those costs. On a very positive note, our proactive investments, including the Res 7 site, battery and solar, have provided a minimum of about 1.8 million in cost savings. Again, we're anticipating that number will go up a bit as we bring the Deer Creek battery online and as we continue to optimize some of our practices. At this time, staff is not recommending that we pursue any additional projects, although we are, again, continuing to look for new opportunities, and we'll present those to the board as they become available.
Well, first I want to thank you for, I know it took a lot of work to put that together, a lot of homework and digging, but it's good information. And I think overall, EID's done very well on our alternative energy projects. And I think it sounds like we've learned our lesson, maybe to be a little more critical on our payback periods and such. So thank you, John, appreciate it. Is there any other, George?
Many moons ago, we talked about putting a hydro generation project in our flume. And where did that end up?
Again, I think Director Anzini brought that up slightly with the Tuolumne example.
No,
Again, we risk the same, there's a lot of risk associated in pursuing that. The biggest risk is the impacts to our operations, maintenance, and access for those facilities. One other consideration on that is it has to be accepted by PG&E and incorporated into their system. So a lot of our flumes, there aren't adjacent PG&E wires. I believe if we did pursue that, we would be, again, under the RSBCT program. So, you know, just because we generate electricity doesn't mean that PG&E has to accept it. So if we went again through that facility, brought it online in some sort of feasible way, we could still be left holding some generation that we wouldn't be able to use.
Thank you.
Yep.
And as that canal is flowing water and you have debris and logs and other stuff in there, gets stuck on an inline generator, the cost of an overtopping of that canal would be significant.
Just a point of order, there's a Proposition 1 coming into our ballot in November regarding water. And I think there's a lot of caveats in there that may include these things we want to pay attention to for any of the general public. But there's dialogue that's still coming down, but there's very big possibility that there might be some waivers there too.
Perfect. We'll look at it.
Is there any public comment or question on information item number 12?
If members of the public would like to address the board on information item number 12, please refer to the detailed instructions on page 2 of today's agenda. President Day, it doesn't appear any members of the public are wishing to speak on information item number 12.
All right, thank you. And while I'm thinking about a request, either this fall or maybe possibly at the beginning of next year when we potentially have new board members, is a review of our CalPERS bonds and the retirement funding. of how we're meeting the projections. We all had questions and concerns about it, but thought it was the best thing to do. But I want to see now, a couple of years in, how we're doing, how close we're coming to meeting those projections.
It's on my list.
Okay, thank you. All right, and we'll be moving to closed session. We will turn the meeting off and return. Counselor, do we have an estimate on time?
Yeah, thanks, President Day. The board will be meeting to consider two closed session items. They're listed on today's agenda as closed sessions A and B. I anticipate that it will require the board not less than 20 minutes. But before we adjourn or recess into closed session, I'd like to just point out and ask the board to take a certain action. The Brown Act under closed session A requires that before the board recess into closed session to discuss labor negotiations, that it first publicly designate its labor negotiation representatives. So what I've done on today's agenda is to list those that I propose the board appoint as its labor negotiation representatives. This would be for the upcoming negotiations of labor contracts for both of the district's bargaining units. Each of the individuals here that I've proposed would participate during certain, perhaps not all of the labor negotiating meetings, and perhaps not all of the closed sessions, but these would be the agency's designated representatives for the various value that they would add to the negotiation. So with that, President Day, before the board recesses into closed session, I would request that the board take action to appoint these individuals.
Yeah, I'll make a motion that we appoint the proposed agency designated representatives, Mr. Abercrombie, Polson, Ms. Leeper, Mr. Perez, Ms. Bandy, Mr. Cochran, and Ms. Vinton. Thank you. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Is any board questions or comment? Any public questions or comment?
If members of the public would like to make a comment on the action of closed session item A, moved by Director Day and seconded by Director Dwyer to appoint agency designated representatives for the upcoming negotiations, Jim Abercrombie, Brian Polson, Elizabeth Leeper, Jose Perez, Jamie Bandy, Dan Corcoran, and Kristen Vinton. President Day, it doesn't appear any members of the public are wishing to speak.
All right, please vote.
Division 1, 2, 4, and 5 voting aye, motion carries.
Thank you. And now we'll go into closed session, and I'm having a hard time. Our web broadcast will shut down until we may return at 10:40 a.m., but it could be later. All right, we're back from closed session at 11:20 a.m. Counselor, do we have anything to report?
Yes, thank you, President Day. This is Elizabeth Leeper, Senior Deputy General Counsel for the district, providing the report out of closed session. Regarding closed session item A, the board met and provided direction, but took no reportable action. Regarding closed session item B, the board met and provided direction, but took no reportable action. And that concludes my report.
Great, thank you. Jennifer, do we have any assignments?
None today.
Okay.
Oh, excuse me. We actually have one from President Day. President Day requested that in the fall or the beginning of next year, after the new board is seated, that we have a review of the CalPERS and other bonds. So I thought she said that I thought she said that I may ask for it later. That's why I didn't repeat it.
Well, that was my next thing. I would like
Okay.
to see a report on our grant statuses And I know that one of our managers did say they were doing it, so, but I'd like to bring it to the board.
All right. And so meeting adjourned
At
at 11:22.